The Quad alliance has been thrown into disarray after the US President Joe Biden cancelled his Australian trip at the last minute. Doubts remain as to when the four-nation meeting will be rescheduled. Some critics say it might not be for a while. The former Prime Minister Scott Morrison has warned against any watering down of the partnership as some of the leaders try to meet on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Japan at the weekend. Joining me now is former Foreign Minister Bob Carr. Bob Carr, thanks so much for your time. You've said that we've been a little bit too gullible about the relationship. What do you mean by that?
Well, you referred to it as an alliance, and Scott Morrison referred to it as a partnership. It's neither. It's a diplomatic forum. It's been talked up, and I think that's been a mistake by Australians, probably on both sides of politics, to talk it up as something more than that. It's a consultative forum, and all four parties in the forum have actually gone on record saying it's not a security arrangement, not an alliance, not a partnership, not a security arrangement. It's a quite useful forum and one I support, and it's got the implicit signal, and a useful one, to Beijing, that should Beijing's behaviour become over-assertive, then it could become something else. But at this stage, it's a diplomatic talking shop, and nonetheless quite useful as such for a middle power like Australia.
OK, so at this point it is essentially a signal to China, a bit of a shot across the bow, if you like, but it's nothing more than four blokes getting together to talk about common interests?
Yeah, that's right. That's a correct way of putting it. Not an alliance, not a partnership, not a security pact.
OK, what do you make of Joe Biden's last-minute cancellation? I think we could all see that the debt ceiling crisis wasn't going to be sorted out. Was it optimism on his part or a bit of naivety, do you think?
I think it's a more important signal. It's a signal that America has got extremely polarised politics. You've got the Republicans pushing this to the very end. American politics has gone to the extremes. Now, there are a lot of implications in that for Australia, but one implication is that you can't count on the president to be able to walk away from the fierce battles in Washington fought because Democrats and Republicans have drifted to the far right and the far left. And you've also got the fact that the American Constitution was written in the 1790s. It's the oldest written constitution in the world, and it's pretty creaky. It's pretty creaky. So the authority of a US president in world affairs can sometimes be weakened by the domestic battles on Capitol Hill and between Capitol Hill and the White House.
You went somewhere yesterday, which I think many current politicians aren't willing to say out loud, even if they think it privately, and that is the frailty and cognitive ability of Joe Biden. What is your concern there, and how might it affect us?
I think we've got a pretty frightful choice here. You've got Trump and all the uncertainties of a president who doesn't take briefings, who makes things up, who's very fond of Putin, for example, who's contemptuous of US allies in NATO, at least, probably not in Asia, to be fair to him. A choice between Trump and the fact that Trump has got in his base a strong isolationist element. People, for example, who criticise America's quite justified commitment to Ukraine within the Republican Party. And on the other hand, you've got the certain Democratic choice for the candidacy for president, a man who is in his 80s and will be 85 at the end, 85 or 86 at the end of his next term. There's got to be real doubt about the frailty of President Biden and about the prospect that a somewhat nervous, relatively inexperienced Kamala Harris would be there to take over. Now, there's ought to fill with some apprehension all those Australians concerned with looking at the longer term. And don't forget this, if Trump doesn't win, his faction has captured the Republican Party, so it will be a son of Trump, a Trump-style candidate who's likely to be the next Republican president, whether they win this time or one term off.
Well, you've been pretty critical of Joe Biden about how he's responded to Australia's request, particularly on the Assange matter thus far. Would you go as far to say that it might actually be better to see a return of Trump?
That's an interesting question. It's interesting to take that apart. I think for Australia, the issue is overwhelmingly having a president, having an administration that doesn't feel obliged to battle every time for its continued primacy. We want an America with a creative role in the Asia Pacific. That's in Australia's interest. There's no argument about that. But in America, as Peter Varghese argues today in the Financial Review, a former head of the Department of Foreign Affairs, it's not in our interest to have America so obsessed with its primacy, with its dominance, with its leadership, that it's going to take us to the brink of war. A war between China and the United States would be catastrophic for Australia and the world. Now, are we less likely to have such a war with Trump or with Biden? It's a somewhat open question. And again, it highlights the basic point I'm making, that Biden's cancellation simply confirms America is not the cool-headed, always reliable partner. There's a large element of unreliability, of unpredictability in an America whose politics is so polarised and whose political system is so creaky and dysfunctional.
That said, just quickly, is Kevin Rudd the right man for Australia to have in Washington at the moment then?
Absolutely the right man, and we're extraordinarily lucky that he wanted the job, because he knows
You didn't want to do it?
in detail... Sorry?
You didn't want to do it?
No, it's beyond me, and I'm not attracted to... I've never been attracted to an ambassadorial post. If you run the whole throbbing electric state of New South Wales for 10 years as I did, running an embassy bureaucracy is nowhere near
Beneath
an
you?
exciting job. But I think the great thing about having Kevin Rudd there is that he knows the whole history of America, China, Taiwan diplomacy, and can engage Americans and direct them to a status quo on Taiwan that can keep the peace. Above all, it's in Australia's interest to avoid a war between America and China.
Bob Carr, always fascinating to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time.
Laura, my honour. Thank you.